What's good, YouTube? This is Al B back with another video. Today I'm going to be covering the brand new reverb plugin from Baby Audio called Crystalline. Now, Crystalline is a next generation algorithmic reverb plugin that gives you a lot of control over your reverb, and for me it's going to be really helpful for when I'm using loops or making samples. It really allows you to get some control over your clips that have a lot of different frequency information in it. You're going to be able to really filter out and weed out the sound that you're looking for and control the reverb a lot. Really excited about this one, guys. As always, Baby Audio has done a good job. Before we get into the details of it, guys, you already know, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button so I can keep bringing you guys this good content, all right? Without further ado, this is Al B. Let's get into it. Yes, sir. All right, so I have a sample kind of selected here that I'm going to start out with, and I'm going to just play the sample and I'm going to mess with some of these different settings. After I've played through some of the settings a little bit, just to give you a feel for how the plugin sounds and some of the drastic, effects it can do, then I'm going to go back through and explain every individual setting to you in more detail. If you guys want to see more in-depth understanding of these, then stick around. All right, guys, we're going to jump right on into it. But first things first, if you don't already, put in some headphones, put both of them on, don't leave one off, because there's going to be a lot of stereo information in here, a lot of subtle nuances, right? So I want you guys to be able to hear that, to be able to appreciate the plugin to its fullest. So go ahead and put on your headphones if you don't already. I like that one. Dark and moody. All right, so you guys kind of can see some of the sounds you can get out of it. I'm going to now switch to just another sample, and let's check it out with that one. First, without the reverb. So you can see that mono version sounds pretty good. I can appreciate that one as well. I probably would turn my ducker up on most of these just to keep the reverb as clean as possible, where it only comes in when the signal gives you space for it. But there you guys have it. That's just kind of how it sounds and some of the things that you can do with it. Now let's jump into the individual settings and the individual sections of this plugin. I really think it's worth just sticking around for a few minutes so you can really understand the amount of control that you have here, guys. This is really powerful, right? Let's get into it. All right, guys. So I'm going to start with just a high level overview of each of the sections, right? I'm going to hit some of the specific settings in each section. So first things first, you have 4 major sections that you can see on either side of this plugin. On the top left, you have your reflection section. And as the name would imply, this is going to be where you really can control the reflections from the reverb. You have your size, you can go from tiny all the way up to spacey, right? And you have some in between. Then you have your sparkle, right, that you can change. The sparkle is really about controlling the high frequency content in the reverb, which really can give it a shimmer, even if you will. You can control how shiny or how sparkly it is with the sparkle control here in reflections. Moving further over, you have your width, which is very self-explanatory, right? You can go all the way from totally mono all the way up to wide and then even to extra wide. So you have a wide range that you can choose from here, no pun intended. Moving down, you have your depth, which is really about how deep the reverb is, right? You can have your resolution set from basic, high, or pristine. And what this really does is it makes the reverb almost more, I want to say more realistic. It kind of removes some of those metallic artifacts that you can get with some reverb plugins. The more pristine you go or the higher you go, then the less of those kind of artifacts you're going to hear inside of the reverb. Also, it takes up more CPU space, right, to be pristine than it does basic. But yes, if you're having CPU issues, try taking it down to basic or high and see how that works for you. Moving over, you have your modulation, which is going to be where we add in different pitch variations. Modulation is going to be really helpful for spicing up synths, guitars, as well as vocals. Modulation is going to be something you're going to want to play with in those scenarios. So shimmer is what allows you to control the high end of the reverb signal, where you can make it last longer, have a longer tail than the rest of the signal does. So say you don't want all of your lower end to be muddying up your mix and you just want the high end to have a longer tail. You can play with some of that here in the shimmer, where you have two different settings. You have a cutoff, which determines the low cutoff of the shimmer effect, as well as the multiplier, which kind of multiplies the ending time of the higher frequencies, if that makes sense. So that's what you do there with shimmer. But moving over to the top right, you have your cleanup section, and it's very clear what this is going to do, right? You're going to be able to clean up and tighten your signal. You have damping, which is going to be where you control the high pass and the low pass frequencies of the signal. This is what's going to help you kind of keep your mix from being too muddy. If I'm using like loops that have a lot of frequencies from low to high, I will use this to kind of make sure I'm cutting out all of my bass and all of my lower end, because I don't really usually want that to be processed through the reverb. So you try to cut that out to keep your mix as clean as possible. And then you can control your low pass to determine how, again, how much of that shiny high end content you want in your reverb. Then you have sides. The side is really a high pass filter that controls the stereo content. So basically anything that is on that you're allowing through with the high pass is going to keep stereo content in it. And anything that's kind of lower than that high pass filter, the parts that are getting cut are going to have just mono information. So this again is really good for keeping your mix from being too muddy. That's kind of the whole point in this cleanup section, is to keep the reverb as clean as possible. And this is another way to do that. Roll off your lower end frequencies and keep those from going stereo. Usually you want those to be more mono, and then your higher end frequencies that are above your high pass frequency will be allowed through, and they will still keep their stereo information, right? So it's not a true EQ or anything like that where it's cutting out the low end, but it's just making the low end mono only and letting the high end continue to be stereo. Then you have your gate, which has a threshold setting and a release setting, so you can control at what point the reverb kicks in. The higher you put it, then you're less likely to grab a lot of unintended sounds and just pieces in the music that you're not trying to have go through your reverb signal. Once again, another good way to keep your reverb clean. Moving on down to the shape section, you have your tone, which is self-explanatory, right? You can control the balance of whether it's a brighter or a darker reverb. So really it's essentially what they call a tilt EQ, where if you want to make it brighter, it kind of tilts this way and cuts out low frequencies and lets the high frequencies through. And if you want it to be darker, it'll tilt the opposite way, letting through lower end frequencies while cutting out higher frequencies. I hope this is right too when I go to actually put this on the video, and this isn't backwards, but anyway, you get it. Then you have smoothing, which is really just a way to kind of mellow out, if you want to, the reverb some, to keep it from like completely drenching your mix and making it just too wet. You're going to want to use smoothing to kind of control that a little bit. Then you have your transients, which basically you have two kind of sides to the transients. You have the attack side, so you can make the reverb focus on the attack part of the signal, or you can move it up and make it focus more on the sustain or kind of the tail end of the incoming signal. So this is how you can control which part of the signal the reverb focuses on, whether it's the initial attack or whether it's the ending or the sustain part of the signal. All right, guys, there you have it. Those are the 4 main sections: reflections, depth, cleanup, and shape. Down at the bottom, you have your output section, which has a ducker. The ducker is going to do exactly what it says. It's going to lower the reverb signal as the original signal comes into the plugin. So if you turn this all the way up, right, then you would hardly hear any reverb. If you turn it all the way down, then you're going to always hear the reverb. I like to keep it around, around 75 to 50, somewhere in between there. So the ducker is going to give you a cleaner mix where you can kind of control the reverb without really compromising the dry parts of the track. So you don't have to send it through a different effects channel and have parallel processing or anything like that. You can do a lot of that control right here with ducker. The reverse button here, this is going to reverse the reverb playback. So you can do some really cool sound design things with this one. Freeze is going to be another creative effect that takes like a snapshot of the reverb where you click, and it's going to hold that until you unclick it or until you disable it, right? This is probably more helpful for making like transitions inside of your mix. So that's one way you can use the freeze button here as well. Your dry wet is self-explanatory. It's going to control how much of the dry signal comes through. If I want it to be totally dry, I would turn it to 0. If I want it to be totally only the wet signal comes back out, then I would turn it all the way to wet. Then you have your wet lock. If you turn the wet lock on, basically it's going to keep it at whatever you set when you toggle through presets. Otherwise, when you toggle through different presets, the dry wet may change depending on that preset. But if I always like my dry wet to be 60, then you can set it, turn on the lock, and as you go through presets, it won't change on you. All right, that's the output section. Then right here, right in the kind of the top middle, you have your start and end, which is essentially your pre-delay and your decay settings. To have it sync directly with the tempo of your DAW, you can turn it to sync mode and kind of can control, the measures or the beats, how far out it starts and how far it ends. You have individual controls, but if you want to have more of a traditional reverb feel and workflow, you can also turn it into milliseconds and control your pre-delay and decay time by milliseconds if you want. I like keeping mine in sync. I think it usually makes for a cleaner mix, so that's my personal preference. And then here you'll actually, when you play the signal, we're going to see the actual waveform here. On your top panel, you have where you can turn it to black or white. You just click the color icon. Then you have the Baby Audio icon, which in all of Baby Audio's plugins, if you click the name Baby Audio, you can bypass the plugin right inside of the plugin itself, and you don't have to jump back out to your mixer. Saves you a little bit of time there. Then in the center, you have your presets, factory preset, user presets. You can load your preset, and obviously you can save your presets. Here to the right, you have help, right? Which when you turn this is really helpful. So you don't have to remember what every little setting is doing. If you turn on help and you highlight over it in the bottom center, it will kind of give you a quick explanation of what the setting is doing. So this is really helpful if you don't want to try to remember all of them. You can just hover over and you'll see. Eco mode, when you turn this on, it's going to save CPU by reducing the resolution and by turning off shimmer. And then of course you have make default, where you can take whatever settings you currently have applied and make those the default for the plugin. That way, whenever you open up a new instance, it'll go to this new default you just set. And then you have reset, which will just go back to the factory default. Load the default. Now let's hear what it sounds like with my full track in there. All right, guys, there you have it. Crystalline by Baby Audio. I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button so I can keep bringing you guys this dope content. All right? All right? Until next time, this is Al B, and we are out. Yes, sir.